Gotcha. I will do that.
So go ahead when you are ready.
Do you want me to introduce myself?
Yep, go ahead and introduce yourself and just let everyone know a little bit about your personal situation and what you got going on.
So I'm Stephanie, and I came to you guys mostly because I found out I had celiac disease 10 years ago, which was an automatic death sentence for gluten consumption for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It was hard, and I was like, okay, I can do that as long as I have dairy. And then I went from like 2007 until I moved here at the end of 2012.
Yeah.
Still going through the gluten-free diet, but like still not feeling well, still having stomach issues, still just having joint pain, like extreme joint pain.
Yeah.
I was a dental hygienist and almost had to quit my job. Not going back to school. They tried to give me the fibromyalgia diagnosis, and I was like, I'm too young to be falling apart like this.
That's for the older people. Yeah.
No, it's like, I can't, there's no way this is happening to me. And I'm only in my early 20s. So
Yeah.
I did some research and found that I was nightshade sensitive. So I cut the nightshades and then eventually got into CrossFit, did paleo, light paleo, got pregnant on accident with my first kid.
Yeah.
Had tons of food and like aversions while I was pregnant, ate just gluten-free, but pretty much like, standard American diet, gluten-free, high carbs, all that fun stuff. Gained like 35 pounds with my first pregnancy. It was not fun. Had an 8-pound baby for my first baby.
Oh, wow.
So he was a chunker. Ended up having some pre-diabetes stuff after I had him. I also got diagnosed with Hashimoto's when I got diagnosed with celiac.
Okay.
But other than being a thyroid issue, had no clue how food would impact that, diet, lifestyle, exercise, the whole gamut.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've basically done everything from keto, paleo, autoimmune protocol diet, dairy-free, nightshade-free, and I just had my second baby and still trying to figure out like what works for me, because I love eggs, I love coffee, I love nightshades, but my body doesn't seem to
like it.
Yeah, so I want to know what my DNA says about me so I can get a better picture of what I should be doing.
So, what is the big why for you? Why, obviously you have all these different diagnoses and obviously you feel a certain way. What is it? What are you trying to achieve? Most people will say like, I just want to be healthy, but like, what is it that you really want? Besides being healthy, is it something that you want to do? Is there something that it's preventing you from being able to do?
I think mostly the challenge that I found, so there is a life before kids with autoimmune disease, and then there's life with autoimmune disease and kids. So before, my why was just like, I want to feel good so that I can have fun with my husband and not be, not wanting to go out on the weekends because my stomach is bothering me because I got glutenized at a restaurant or whatever it may be. But now with kids, I'm like, I don't have time to feel bad. I don't have time to have bad sleep or have my adrenals messing up on me. Or like I have 2 little boys who are 100% on the go all the time, and a husband that likes to have fun too. So
yeah,
it's a lot on mama's shoulders to, find a health balance and, be there for your kids and stuff like that. So, and then I would love to share that with other people, like explain to them like, okay, this is what worked for me. Let's figure out what works for you as an individual. What works for me might not work for you, but the community and discussion is important, I think.
So you essentially had to go the long route of trying what worked for other people, but you weren't really going to doctors or doing anything to figure out specifics on what you needed to do, essentially.
No. Even though I would ask for labs or blood work and stuff like that, I was just kind of, given a generic, like, get 8 hours of sleep, drink water, eat your vegetables.
Have you you've gotten tested for celiac and gluten recently?
I got tested for celiac back in 2007 because my mom found out she had it. She had breast cancer, a really bad breast cancer, invasive ductal cell carcinoma, and extremely anemic. So they said, have your daughters tested. It's genetic. And so I had a blood test, and that came back positive. And the same time they told me about my thyroid, which I wasn't expecting them to test, but I'm glad they did it.
Yeah.
And I had an endoscopy and a biopsy, and it all came back positive.
Okay. And so what happens? Have you had gluten recently? I'm just curious so people know. Is there anything that actually happens, or do you just
No, the only time I have gluten is if I'm at a restaurant and they glutenize me on accident. I literally ordered from a gluten-free restaurant before vacation one time.
Yeah.
And my sister-in-law is soy intolerant, and she's like, these tacos are too good to not have soy in them.
Yeah.
And I asked the manager, she's like, what do you put in your tacos? And he was like, well, it's a secret ingredient. He was like, but I'll tell you, it's lime juice, it's salt, it's garlic. He was like, and a little bit of beer. And I'm like,
yeah.
Did you just say beer? It doesn't cook the gluten out, just the alcohol. So things like that happen.
Did you have a bad reaction?
Yes, stomach issues. I tend to get, I call it a celiac rash. If I've been exposed to gluten, it doesn't look like eczema per se. I used to stump the doctors back in 2006 where I got diagnosed, but it was a definite reaction to gluten, and I could not figure out what was going on. They couldn't figure out what was going on, but I have found a community of people in the celiac sphere who they eat gluten, they get a celiac rash.
Okay. Yeah. So, essentially what we're looking at is we're looking at every piece of your DNA. So we're looking at it from nutrition, sleep, neurotransmitters, supplementation. We're looking at what precisely your body needs to function. And so health is I call it like a compound effect. Everything you've done between birth and now has been compounded. So if you've been doing, let's say, the wrong things, right, for your genetics for so long, that's why people have the health issues they do. So it's not going to be like a flip of a switch or a turnaround. Once you start adopting the things that your body actually needs to function, that's when you start actually getting healthy. Mm-hmm. Okay, but right now you've done a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit up there, but you really haven't been piecing together. You've tried, everyone tries to, but until you give your body what it's actually needing, like what it thrives on the most, it's not able to heal properly, and then you get left with different diagnoses, symptoms, tired, you name it, just a million symptoms. So we want to look at the whole spectrum, figure out, first is what is it that your body needs? Once we know that, then we could build you a customized blueprint on what you need to do on a daily basis to live, function, and try to optimize your genetics to allow you to be as close to 100% functionality.
That's awesome.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to be looking back and forth because I have all your notes on the side and some notes on here. So first thing, you can't really see my screen. I wish I knew how to share it with you, but I don't. We're going to be looking at your response to hunger and satiety. So what is your drive for hunger? Do you have a normal response when you're eating? Do you feel full? Or, like me, I could eat till the cows come home, and then it's like 20 minutes later, I feel like my stomach's going to explode because I don't have a proper eating response. So how is it? Do you feel hungry all the time? Like when you eat food, do you actually feel satisfied? Can you explain that a little bit to me?
I do. I feel like it's been different since I have been doing AIP because it is so low carb. That took me a while to get used to because everything gluten-free is high in carbs. Like even the substitutes, they put in rice and they put in a million other things to make it taste somewhat decent. I definitely say I'm a hangry person. If I don't eat, everybody better watch out.
So you have a strong hunger response when you get hungry.
Yeah, it's hyper exaggerated. So I feel bad for my husband when I get hungry.
All right. Do you have trouble knowing when you're full or not?
I definitely could graze all day long.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever really feel like a full sensation. Okay, I'm about to burst. I can't eat anymore.
Do you prefer certain things like sweet, sour, salty meats? Any preferences?
I've always been a dessert girl, growing up, even just until this last January. I ate dessert every single night,
Good.
the day wasn't done
Yeah.
unless you had a piece of chocolate or ice
Yeah.
cream or some sort of dessert. And the first 2 weeks that I did the autoimmune protocol diet, I was like dying from not being able to have sweets because they
Yeah.
limit your sugar. So I feel like since I went through those first 2 weeks of, sugar hell, getting away from it, I haven't been as sweet driven, but I definitely say I prefer sweets over salty stuff.
Sweet and salty. Okay. Do you like meat or fish or anything?
I do.
Which do you prefer more?
Red meat, probably over fish.
Red meat over fish. So,
But I do love fish, like seafood. Grew up in Florida. Seafood's my thing. Love it.
gotcha. So, essentially, when we look at your genetics, it says that exactly almost what you're essentially saying. You have a hyper response or an increased response for hunger. When you're hungry, you know it, right? I'm exactly like that. Like if I get hungry, I get hangry and I need a Snickers bar essentially. But you have that increased response for hunger. Whereas some people, they can just go all day and they're hungry, but they just go all day. They're fine. You also, based on your genetics, it's just saying that you have trouble feeling full. Your body doesn't have a proper response
Makes
of,
sense.
of knowing when to feel full. It's not your fault. It's just looking at different neurotransmitter levels. And, that essentially tells your brain, yes, I'm full. No, I'm not full. Your body has a little bit of an abnormal response to that. In the grand scheme of things, it's not that big of a deal. We're just looking at the hunger and satiation response, but it does have a bigger impact when we start looking at some neurotransmitters. It just says based on your genetics, you will probably have more frequent meals. You'd actually probably do better on frequent meals. Do you get any, so let's say you get sick or have a bad response to food. Do you typically avoid that food for a long time or a while? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So based on your genetics, it's just saying that like you tend to avoid things when it has a negative response or feedback. So like if something just doesn't sit well from you, you'll just push that out and you probably never do it again almost.
I didn't eat salmon for almost 2 years after the day I found out I was pregnant with my son. I smelled salmon and I got so sick, and I didn't know I was pregnant, and I literally didn't eat it for years. That makes sense.
Right. And it says, are you an impulsive eater? Or do you get food cravings?
I do. I feel like I do get cravings sometimes. Obviously, when I'm pregnant, it's like to a whole new level.
Yeah.
I almost got plane tickets to go to my favorite Mexican place in Florida in my first trimester.
That's a little impulsive. No, it's just saying, based on your genetics, you have correct me if I'm wrong, it just says you have a little bit more propensity to get addicted to things. So like sugary foods, sweets, a little bit of addiction, not like alcohol or anything like that, but you tend to have a little bit of an addictive response to things that you really like.
That would probably, yeah. I can eat the same things that I like over and over and over with no variety, and it doesn't.
There you go. So
he doesn't do that.
yeah, no, I mean I'm not like that at all. I have to have a little bit of variety, but it just goes to show like these are your genetics, and it's already pointing out kind of how you already live your life.
That's crazy.
Okay. It's going to get more in detail as we kind of work our way down. That's just the basic things we look at for hunger. Satiety just lets us know when we're developing you a diet or a blueprint exactly how we need to build your diet based on how many meals you need to be doing, what kind of meals we need to be eating. So that way we can elicit the right responses. And so that way we can have the right things happen in your body, how they're supposed to happen. Next thing we just look at insulin resistance to see if you're more prone or have more propensity towards insulin resistance. Sounds like it runs in your family, having insulin issues. Based on your genetics, it says you just have a greater propensity to having insulin resistance. You're at a moderate risk. Those things can be controlled, obviously. So that's where the epigenetics would come in, and that's where we would kind of coach you on a weekly, monthly basis to show you what exactly you need to do to alter those genetic expressions. But right now, based on your genetics, it's just saying that you're at a moderate risk of having insulin resistance. You already know that because it kind of runs in your family. You don't have any issues with dairy, right?
I have a love-hate relationship with dairy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's my friend, especially if it's I feel like the good dairy, it's like grass fed and raw.
Yeah.
If I'm impulsive and I go to Polio's and I get a gluten-free dairy pizza, it's probably not going to end well for me.
Okay. So if it's good quality, no issue.
I don't feel like I have any issues, but
So when we look at your genetics, it's not the be all end all. It's just saying based on the genes that we look at, it's saying that you have a lower sensitivity. Okay. It's not saying that, you may never have a response or anything like that. It's just saying the likelihood of you having issues with milk is very, very low.
that's awesome.
Okay. Do you have any issues with high fat dairy? Like if you were to have, obviously you said you've had raw milk before, correct?
I had raw milk.
No issues?
I don't think I had any issues.
Okay.
I had a sensitive baby, Luke, my firstborn. He
Uh-huh.
had tons of food sensitivity, so I couldn't eat dairy because I was breastfeeding him for like the first 16 months that he was alive.
Okay.
But Kieran has no issue with me having dairy.
Okay. Just saying, when we look at your genetics, you actually have a genetic privilege. You're able to eat high-fat dairy products, and you really don't have a improper response, which is a good thing. Some people just can't handle high-fat dairy without having a negative response in the body. So for you, you do have a little bit of a genetic privilege. You're able to do that. Before I go on and before I actually forget, you don't have to share this with me or not. Do you ever struggle with like anxiety or anger or I know you have a couple of addictions and a little bit of food cravings, but do you have any anger? Do you get angry easy? Anything like that?
Russ would say I'm 0 to 100.
Okay.
In a second, yes.
Okay, so you do. Yeah, so when we look at your genetics, it's just saying that you have low dopamine levels. And the typical things with that is you'll struggle with 0 to 100, right? That's kind of how my wife is. But yeah, I'll send you a scale of what it looks like, but anyone that struggles with low dopamine, they will typically have the addiction issues, like food addictions, any type of addictions. Sometimes they'll have impulse behaviors. A lot of times they'll have anger issues, not like in a bad way, but just 0 to 100 or, just out of nowhere you get angry. It's not your fault. It's just saying that your dopamine and your norepinephrine and just overall your neurotransmitter balance is a little bit off. There should be a nice little equilibrium. If I were to draw like a little bell curve, you're right at the top and you're kind of on one side of that scale than the other.
That makes sense.
So that's going to be one of the things that we'd work on is just elevating those dopamine levels to allow you to feel a little bit more relaxed in the body, just to calm the body down essentially.
Yeah, I went into a stress management class in the 6th grade, so anxiety is like been a lifelong.
Yeah, it's in there. We'll show you ways to kind of help alleviate that and have a better response to that. We look at your gluten. So we look at gluten genetics. It's just saying that you're at a moderate risk for gluten. Obviously, you already know that. You've been blood tested. It's just confirming that based on your genetics, yes, you are at a moderate risk. You're most likely going to have an issue. Sometimes with gluten, it's not necessarily the gluten that's an issue for some people. It's actually what the next thing we look at, glutamic acid. So you're at a high risk for glutamic acid. So what that means is, you've heard of glutamate?
Mm-hmm.
So just think of glutamic acid as glutamate. And in your body, glutamate is supposed to be converted into GABA, which is a calming neurotransmitter. If you eat too many foods that have glutamic acid in it, and your body is not able to sufficiently convert that into GABA, some of the things that you'll have issues with is anxiety, agitation, trouble sleeping. Those sound a little familiar?
Yep.
Okay. So what that means is that until you lower, that's why most likely a gluten-free diet really hasn't, it's made a little bit of an impact for you, but it hasn't fixed everything.
Yeah.
Because it may not even have been the gluten necessarily. It could have just been that you have an issue with grains in general and the glutamic acid. And until you lower that down, you're still going to.
Glutamic acid is in grains.
Mm-hmm. So glutamic acids in like wheat, grain, soy, dairy, eggs, chicken, turkey, seeds, MSGs. It's in a lot of things.
Okay.
You're never ever going to be able to get rid of it completely. It's almost impossible. How we like to do it is we start, if you're here, we keep lowering it down until you get to a point of where you no longer have those symptoms.
Okay.
Once we get to that point, you stay right there, and you just know that you need to stay at this threshold to make sure that you don't exhibit any of those symptoms. But that's probably going to give you more of a relief with a lot of your symptoms than just removing gluten in general.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
That's a huge thing that we would actually start working on, is just the glutamic acid. As far as sweets and snacking, we look at that. Everyone loves this one. So it's just saying that you, yeah, high addiction risk, you like sweets, and you like snacking essentially. And it all goes back to those neurotransmitters. You're trying to elicit that response. But yes, you do love sweets. It's in your genetics. It's pretty cool. There's some things that you can do to decrease that perception of sweets, and then your body's actually craving for it. You can actually decrease that with certain supplementation.
Take away my chocolate? Is that one of the
No,
remedies?
actually, it's actually there's a certain supplement that you can take, and you take it before you start getting like the cravings, and then if you go and eat that like cookie or whatever it is, or chocolate, you eat it and it tastes like cardboard. It tastes terrible. Yeah, so it develops it develops a feedback loop, and it makes people not want to eat it anymore because they get that response like, oh, this tastes disgusting, and then they stop eating it.
Which would help with my gene that has the tendency to avoid foods that I don't jive with.
Yeah.
Okay,
so it would work. That's why I brought it up. It'd work actually perfect for you. Next thing. So anyone in your family have issues with like cholesterol issues, heart issues? Obviously, we know we have insulin issues.
My dad's dad has a pacemaker.
Okay.
And my dad just found out, I'm going to totally blank on what it's called, but he has a leaky valve and a little bit of an arrhythmia. They thought they were going to have to shock his heart. This was just recently, but apparently they aren't having to do that. But he does have some heart issues, may have to have a pacemaker at some point.
Okay. When we look at your genetics, it just says it's not a guarantee, but you have a greater propensity if you have a high carbohydrate diet. You're going to have increased abdominal fat. I don't know if you've experienced that when you eat a lot of carbs.
Yes.
Okay. Because your body.
I have a pretty mean six-pack when I've been on the AIP diet right now. But the moment I start increasing carbs,
your genetics don't respond well to carbs at all. It says in the long run, you have just a greater probability of having high bad cholesterol, LDL, and having low HDL. You're also at an elevated risk of having elevated glucose when you eat too many sugary, simple carbs. Yep. Obviously, you know that. So overall, carbohydrate-wise, you would do well on a lower carbohydrate diet. Yep. Once you start taking in too much carbohydrates, your body just doesn't use it very well, and it starts converting it to abdominal fat, and then can lead to other metabolic issues and things that you just don't want to deal with. Your body's actually okay with saturated fat, which is good. Some people, I know the common census out there is like, hey, coconut oil and coconut and all those butter, all the saturated fat's really good for you. But in general, we try to keep most people below 10%, just because it can cause people to feel tired, have foggy brain. It can cause excess of inflammation if your body's not very good at processing it out through the system. Your body does a good job of it, but we just found that it's still better to keep your saturated fats a little bit lower. So 10% is what I'd like to go with. The thing that, because if you have too high of saturated fats, your body just doesn't mobilize it very well. So you want to be more on a, we're looking at your fats right now. You want to be on like a moderate to a little bit lower fat intake. And if we were to break down the fats, you want to have more. Have you heard of monounsaturated fats? Mm-hmm. So monounsaturated fats would be like olive oil, macadamia oil, avocados, almonds, macadamia nuts. you want to look for foods that are higher in mono unsaturated fats, and olive oil. That's huge. Like you should be taking in, half a liter to a liter a week. It's as what my doctor, coach, mentor would say, it's the nectar of the gods.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's one of those things that you want to have in your diet on a daily basis. So for your body to optimize its genetics properly, you want to have a higher mono unsaturated fat intake and a lower poly unsaturated fat. Okay. Most people that have this one, it's a really hard one, but your body has high inflammation, very, very, very high inflammation in the system. It doesn't do a good job of pushing it out. Okay. So inflammation is the root of 95 to 99% of all disease processes. Your body's already at an elevated inflammatory state. So it's actually really, really hard to work with, but there is things that we can do epigenetically to decrease that'll make you feel a million times better. But that is a huge red flag. That's one of those things that we'd actually want to work on to make you feel better. Also, when we're looking at your genetics for fat, just saying when you have high polyunsaturated fats or just a high fat diet. So if you were to follow like a keto diet and do like extremely high levels of fat, it's just going to promote more chronic issues for you, chronic disease issues down the road. It's not going to provide you the same health benefit as it would for some other people.
Okay.
So if you're going to have fats, you want to keep it at a moderate level, but you want it to be more monounsaturated fats, fish oils, olive oils. You want to keep it more on that spectrum than anything else.
Okay.
Okay.
So if I need to follow a low carb diet, is there such thing as a low carb, low fat diet?
You're not following necessarily a low fat diet. You can have like medium, moderate fats, but you want to follow
low carb, moderate fat.
Yeah, I would say you would do better on like a Mediterranean-ish diet.
Okay.
So I would always start, and we always start most people with a baseline of a Mediterranean diet. Okay. And then we kind of work the fat, the carbohydrates, and the protein and whatever levels we're trying to achieve. So for you, we would just lower down the carbohydrates, add in some fiber because your body will do really good on fiber to help you make you feel full. And then increase the monounsaturated fats. So that's going to give you the feeling of being full. You're going to have a normal response, and your body is going to epigenetically express the genes better when you have that. It's going to help with the inflammation too. And then protein is you can actually choose on your protein levels. Your body does fine with moderate or high levels of protein. That's good. So
this makes me happy.
Yeah, right. Well, you want to have a variety. So like meats, turkeys, fishes, just good protein sources and good omega-3 sources. But your body does have a benefit to medium to high levels of protein. So your diet would look more along the lines of having medium to high protein, medium fat intake, and lower carbs. That's awesome. That's how your diet would be. And what's that?
Fish, turkey, beef.
Fish, turkey. Yeah, you want to cut the beef down to maybe like once or twice a week, just because beef does have high saturated fat content. So I would maybe have, what's that? Bacon? Yeah. Yeah, maybe like one time a week.
Dang it, I eat it every day. Okay.
Yeah, just because bacon has pork in it, and pork's one of the most highly acidic meats on the planet. So you just want to add. Yeah, you just want to add a little bit more variety, but stick to more fishes than turkeys, and you can have chicken from time to time and some grass-fed beef as well.
Okay.
But fish is gonna be your friend. So that's your makeup for your diet essentially. Okay. Those are the percentages. Obviously, the number one thing that we're trying to fix is the high levels of inflammation that you most likely have flowing through your system. As far as your metabolism, we look into your metabolism. It says that you have a normal metabolism, which is good. It also says that you would benefit highly from exercise. Okay, so if you don't exercise, you're more likely to gain weight faster, gain abdominal fat. Your body just responds really, really well to exercise.
Good. That makes me happy.
Yep.
Is my body like healthy?
We're getting there. Plant sterols. So have you heard of plant sterols before?
Only from Sarah, from conversations I feel like about you.
Right. So yeah, I got the worst one on this one, but plant sterols, they help lower like your LDL, your triglycerides. They're really, really beneficial for most people. For me though, they're not. Plant sterols are found in vegetables, in high amounts of vegetables, essentially. You don't have any issues with plant sterols. You have a proper response. So you're able to eat as many fruits and vegetables as you want, and you'll get a good benefit from it. I, on the other hand, have to be very careful because I will not, which just leads me to greater risk of having heart issues. I mean, the great thing is that now I know this stuff. If I would have followed the same ketogenic diet that I was doing, I was essentially digging myself a grave when I get older, and that's why I was feeling so crummy on a day-to-day basis. Like I said, though, your metabolism is really, really good. As long as you're working out, that's what we want to see. So, a typical genetic diet for you, we're looking at 30% to 35% fat. 30 to 35% protein, 30% or so fats, maybe 35, and then the remaining carbohydrates. You just want to keep the carbohydrates on a lower spectrum, probably around 20%. Okay. Next thing, we go into supplementation. So this is where things kind of get fun for you. Your body benefits greatly from having B12. Your body does not just doesn't store enough B12, doesn't have very, very high stores. You need supplementation, basically, is what it's telling us based on your genetics. If you have any deficiency in B12, you're going to have energy issues. You're going to have brain fog, brain functionality issues, just feeling like you're going crazy. Stress levels will be through the roof. Your digestive system will be off. Your gut will be just all over the place. Sound a little bit familiar?
Yes. I started after Luke was born with a pretty bad tongue and lip tie. I started taking the methylated B12.
Yeah.
Because I was low in all of my Bs. And then I really supplemented well with Kieran's pregnancy, and the B12s went way up.
So, I mean, that's amazing how, like, your genetics match up to your blood work, right? Yeah. So you did the epigenetic response that we would do. Now that we know that you have B12 issues, I would have told you to go onto a B12 supplement because it would help you out vastly. Okay. Great. And you know that because it did help you. Next thing we look at is B6. B6, you just need normal supplementation of B6. You can find most supplements will have it in there, but there's no real need for increase in supplementation for it, even though B6 is in almost anything that's related to B12 and all the other ones. Just helps the uptake of it. The vitamin A is not your friend. Okay. So vitamin A, your body has a very, very low conversion efficiency of vitamin A. Okay. So let me just take a look. So essentially your body just struggles to convert vitamin A into its normal form or its functional form. So low conversion from beta carotene to retinol is what your body struggles with. So some things that can happen is you can have immune system issues, which you already do because you're having the Hashimoto's, which is an immune system issue. How's your skin? Skin good?
Skin is good when I'm not stressed.
Okay. So vitamin A people can have skin issues in different forms, tooth issues, not having proper tooth strength, eye health, like the eyes having trouble staying moist or just adjusting to light.
Eyes really bad.
Okay, so that just means that your body needs more vitamin A in it, and that will help you function better epigenetically. Okay. Selenium, your body's really low on selenium. You do need increased supplementation. And the number one thing it helps with is thyroid.
Yeah, I take selenium every day.
Yep. So you actually need a lot higher doses of selenium to help with thyroid DNA repair, reproductive health.
I think I just take 200 micrograms right now, but maybe need to.
I mean, that's something after we look through everything, we'd look at it in a little bit more detail. Magnesium, you are deficient in magnesium. Your body needs an increased supplementation of magnesium. You probably know that.
I have restless leg if I don't take magnesium every day. My eye twitches, my feet go crazy.
Yeah, I was going to tell you that at the end. You're too quick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you have an increased probability of having restless leg syndrome. So magnesium, you're already taking it. I'd probably alter your dosages to help you function even better.
Okay.
But it helps with anxiety, heart health. I mean, there's so many reactions of magnesium. It's not even funny. But your body thrives when it has magnesium. Everybody's body does, really.
Okay.
Your body does benefit off of choline intake. Choline helps with cell structure, messaging, nervous system health, fat transport. So increasing your choline intake will help your brain function, your cell structure function to the maximum. Vitamin C, normal supplementation, no problems there. Your body does good with vitamin C. Vitamin E, you want to have low levels of vitamin E. You don't want to take any vitamin E supplementation.
Okay.
Reason for that is because you are at a high inflammation risk. So no vitamin E.
Okay.
As much to remove it as possible for you just because you have the high inflammation. Vitamin D, typical supplementations needed. You do get benefit from sunlight. Some people don't, but you do get a benefit from that, which is very, very good.
Okay.
Vitamin D and vitamin K go together. So typical supplementation of vitamin K, no need for mega dosing anything or taking more than what you actually need.
Okay.
Next one is folate. So these are where some more issues come into hand. You do need increased supplementation of folate. So that's the MTHFR.
Okay. Yeah.
You were concerned about that?
Yeah, I have it. I did some digging with my raw data today from 23.
Yeah. So some common things that people will have is if you have undermethylation or issues with methylation. Sorry, I have something in my eye. For you, you don't have OCD, do you?
I would classify, I feel like I'm in between a type A and type B. I can swing either
Okay.
way. As a mom, I've become less of a type A and more of a type B just because I have to.
Okay. Did you ever look up some of the symptoms of MTHFR?
I just knew about the folate and the B12, and you have trouble detoxing with the gene mutation,
Yep.
which is probably not good when you have autoimmune diseases.
Nope. So some common symptoms would be like anxiety,
Yes.
anemias, bleeding or tender gums. I don't know if you have any of that. Constipation, cracked lips, struggle with depression. Sometimes we'll get dry skin or have hair issues, eczema, dermatitis issues, exhaustion, headaches, flaky skin, insomnia, irritability. Sound familiar? Lack of energy, right? Lack of energy, muscle cramps, poor appetite, poor concentration, hair condition issues, memory issues, rapid heartbeat sometimes, tongue issues, tingling in the hands or feet sometimes, which I've adjusted you before for that. So yeah, you just increasing your folate and fixing your MTHFR is going to be leaps and bounds for you.
Okay. That makes
So
me happy.
yeah, so you do have issues with them. You do have MTHFR, so proper epigenetic response would be taking a methylated folate with like some B6 and folate in there to have the proper response that you're looking for. We would go into the supplementation in another section or time, but yes, you'd have a great response from folate. Other things we look at, iron levels. You do have issues with iron. Obviously, you know that runs in your family. You tend to want to be more anemic. So you just want to make sure that you have proper supplementation of iron to make you feel better. Helps with oxygen transport, brain function, just overall well-being and energy.
Okay.
We also look at nitric oxide, perfect on that. No issues with that. Your body does really well with salt as well. So you don't have any major issues with salt. So you can even up your intake of Celtic salt, Himalayan pink salt. You'd actually get a great benefit for having salt in your system. Now, the favorite, the one that you're concerned of, caffeine.
Oh no.
Tell me a little bit about what happens when you drink coffee.
Have you ever seen that movie with Bradley Cooper where when he takes that pill, the NZT, like
Limitless?
yes,
Yeah.
Limitless. It's my husband's favorite movie, so I've seen it like 50 times.
A million times, yeah.
So we joke that coffee for me is like my NZT.
Okay. Do you get any anxiety when you drink coffee?
If I have too much, yes.
Too much as in what? More than a cup?
I have an 8-ounce cup, and it's half calf, half decaf, and I only drink half of it.
Okay, so yeah, that's why I ask, because your body does not metabolize caffeine very well. So that's why if you drink more than your little half calf, you just get anxious.
Yeah.
Okay. That can also affect.
Anxious, like, yeah, it's bad. I
Yeah.
couldn't drink coffee when I was a hygienist because my hands would shake and I would mess things up. So,
and that'll also affect your sleep.
Yeah, I don't sleep very well.
Yeah. So anytime
through the night, I'm not like I haven't slept through the night since before I got pregnant with him, and I was off caffeine when I was trying to get pregnant with him. So.
You said you slept well when you were off caffeine?
Yeah, that was the last time I got more than, I think the longest I've slept since I got pregnant with him has been 6 hours, like a straight
shot. Yeah. So when we look on your genetics, since your body struggles to metabolize it, you do have increased anxiety with it. I mean, you still have a cup of it. You just got to be really, really careful when you have it. It's got to be early in the morning, just because caffeine and melatonin, they compete for the same binding sites. And so if your body's a slow metabolizer of it, just means that those sites are going to be bound up, and then you're not going to get the proper release of melatonin, which means you get to struggle with sleep.
Is this why my doctor told me to get melatonin when I went to see him on Thursday?
Probably. I mean, melatonin works for some people, but not others. So like for me, melatonin doesn't work for me. There's other things that I do. But for you,
Okay.
it would work, because as long as you don't have the caffeine in there, you'd have a normal response with melatonin. Some people won't though, but you do. So you
drink my coffee early.
Yeah, like before 10 o'clock. I would say for sure before 1, but for you, I would say just before 10, and then take a melatonin before you go to bed, and you'll notice that you'll start sleeping better. It's all in your genetics. Last thing we look at is that was weird. Something happened. Circadian rhythm. So we're just looking at how you should be sleeping for your genetics.
Okay.
Okay. So are you a morning person or evening person?
Before I had kids, I was a morning person.
And now you're an evening person?
I've only not been a morning person since probably the last 6 months, and I've become a night owl and not a morning person.
But you felt like you did better when you were on the morning schedule.
As long as I can remember, always woke up at 6 a.m. The hills are alive with the sound of music. Loved the day.
Right.
Ready to go to bed at 7 p.m. every night. Yeah, total morning person.
Yeah. So just when we look at your chronotype, it just says that there's no preference, but it leans more towards you functioning better, going to bed early and waking up early. That's when your body heals the fastest. That's when you feel the best. That's when you function the best. That's when everything else is able to work properly, when you're going to sleep earlier and waking up earlier. The moment you start sleeping in later, your body just starts going into sleep deprivation mode, and then everything kind of just spirals out from there. So, I always tell all the clients and patients that I work with, I say, try to get to bed before 10, because research shows between 10 and 2 is when the most recovery happens in your body. Okay, so 10 and 2, that's the most important time to get sleep, because that's when everything happens. So if you miss that zone, or you only get a little bit of time in that zone, you're missing the benefit of sleep. Sleep is probably one of the most important things on the planet that we need for our body to be able to function. So next thing we look at is sleep onset. Do you struggle when you're not taking caffeine? How quick do you fall asleep?
I feel like I used to fall asleep really well, and like I said, lately I can't do it. I suck at falling asleep, and I feel like I never had an issue with it, but
yeah. So when we look at how long it takes you to fall asleep, it typically says
it takes me forever. I will say that.
What's that?
if I'm in a stressful period in my life, it will take me.
For a while. Yeah, it just says based on your genetics, it'll take you a while to fall asleep, but it says if everything's functioning how it's supposed to, you can typically fall asleep within 5-10 minutes if you're
I
feeling.
fall asleep in 2 seconds.
Yeah, so people who fall asleep quick, sometimes it just tells that they have sleep deprivation. So normal time to fall asleep is about 15 to 20 minutes.
That makes me feel more normal because I feel like I should be falling asleep like him. Like he literally
Well,
hits
that's what
the pillow and he's out, and I'm like, he's faking. There's no way.
yeah, that's what Sarah does, and I get pissed. But then when you actually look into the genetics, it's not actually a good thing. It just means that you have some sleep. They have some sleep deprivation issues, and when I talk to her about it, she's like, "Yeah, actually, I do. That's why I fall asleep so fast." And so it's not necessarily a good thing. Sleep
Russ is
duration.
bed at like 2 a.m., so he
That's
needs to.
crazy.
That makes sense. He probably is sleep deprived.
Sleep duration says that your body functions a lot better when you get 8.5 to 9 hours of sleep. You need a little bit more sleep than most people. So some people can function great off of 7. You do really, really good off of like 8.5, 9, 9.5. You need that much sleep to be able to have proper functionality. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've always said if I could get 9 hours of sleep, I'd be the happiest human. But even like at 7, I struggle.
Yep. So for your genetics to express properly and for you to feel good, you just need that 9 hours. You got to figure out a way to get that in there. Do you toss and turn a lot? Do you move around a lot?
Yes. I used to like beat my mom up when I would sneak into her bed when I
Oh,
was
you're a fighter. You're a fighter. Yeah. So you have you have a lot of disrupted sleep. So just quality of sleep is not that great. High propensity for sleep issues, disrupted sleep, moving around, not being able to get comfortable.
Yeah.
You do have which one of the reasons is because of the increased restless leg issue, propensity towards that. You have a high probability of having that. And that's also due to dopamine issues as well. Those kind of correlate together. So there's certain things that we would target specifically to hit these genes to get you to feel relaxed, fall asleep, stay asleep, and not move around so much. Okay. Last thing we look at is just detoxification overall. You already know this. I'm just going to reaffirm it for you, but your body does struggle with having proper detoxification patterns. You also do have liver issues, not like your liver is going to die, but your body does have liver issues and improper detoxification. And so there's some things that we would target epigenetically to get the liver functioning again and make you feel better. So with all those things, if we start targeting those specific genes and activating the immune system, activating those certain areas, you'll start feeling better again. But you've taken bits and pieces from different areas and different lifestyles and eating diets, but you haven't gotten so specific to target the things that you need.
Yeah.
So if we were to target those things,
the box top for the puzzle.
Yeah.
Instead of just all the pieces and knowing like I should be creating a certain picture, but I'm not quite sure exactly what it's supposed to look like. I just have bits and pieces. So I feel like I actually have the box top.
Yeah, that's all. I mean, that's all you need. Like that's your genetic picture. There's a couple more things that we would add to that, but you got to do that first and see how you respond, and then we can kind of build you up from there. But if you never did those things, this is how crazy it is because I always ask people, it's like, how do you even know that that's good for you? How do you know? Who told you that you should do this or do that? Like what test was done, or how do you know that's going to work for you? And most people are like, I don't know. I heard it on Dr. Oz or Dr. Mercola or whatever. They said just eat a high fat diet and you'll be healthy. And it's like, it may work for some people, but me in general, like I want everything specific for me. And so why we do that, why we look at the genetics is because that's you. That's Stephanie. No one else has the same genetics as you, which means that your guidelines and your blueprint are going to be a little bit different than someone else.
I'm like so excited about this. You don't even know.
Yeah. So the next step would be like, this is just kind of talking about, it's a lot to take in. It's like getting hit in the face with a piece of pie, essentially. Like you're going to forget some things. We all are. Take some time to digest it, go over it. The next step from here would be actually learning how to implement it. And so that's essentially like what we do with clients is first step is let's read it, go over it, talk about it. You have any questions? Awesome. More questions will come. Next step is we got to coach you through it. We got to teach you how to actually implement it now and actually get it done.
Yeah, because it would, especially somebody who's not used to like doing weird stuff for their health, I could see how that would feel like a lot of changes. But
well, yeah, I mean, if I just gave you these results and said, go figure it out, I'm doing you a disservice because you've already been dealt that before.
yeah.
So now that we know what you need to do, then it's just getting highly specific and showing you how to implement it.
Awesome.
Yep.
I'm excited. I took lots of notes.
I see that. I like it. Yeah. So if you have any questions, get in touch with me or Sarah. We'll help you out, take you from the next steps. But once you get those things working properly, all these little lingering issues that you've been having will finally go away.
Well, it makes me feel better knowing that I'm not a weirdo about my sleep and feeling like I'll need more sleep.
No, I mean, I just got off the phone with another individual, and it's the same thing. She's struggling with so much stuff, and she's actually a lot older, and she's been told that they have nothing to do for her. No, they don't know what to do. She's kind of given up, and no one can figure out what's going on. And we did all the genetic testing and some blood work and some other things with her, and she finally has an answer now. She's happier than she's ever been in the past 20 years because she's like, finally someone's figuring out what's going on with me. That's all I've ever wanted to know is like, why am I feeling like this and what's going on?
And I think that's been hard for me with my blood work and finding doctors, because I go to them with like a list of stuff like blood work wise. And so I have all this blood work, but I'm not really sure why it is the way it is. Like why my B's were low, why my vitamin D was low, and different things like that. But this like makes everything make a lot more sense. Especially when they told me I was pre-diabetic. I was like, how the heck am I pre-diabetic? I'm skinny. Like, I'm not fat. I don't drink a bunch of Cokes. Like, I don't go to McDonald's every day.
Yeah.
But I eat a gluten-free diet that's really high in carbohydrates. So even when she was like, lower your carbs, I was like, I don't eat a lot of carbs. And then I started tracking. I was like, holy junk, I'm eating like 250 grams of carbs a day.
Yep. And that's the problem with gluten-free diets. And I always teach people this. It's like everyone thinks as long as I look good and I feel good, I'm healthy. And it's like, no, you're pre-diabetic and you looked great. You looked fine. You looked healthy. But that's not how we judge our health with MyGene Pro. We look at how you're functioning. If you were functioning at 100%, wouldn't have an issue.
Yeah.
So we just got to increase that functionality. So that's what we'll work on in the next couple weeks. We'll get in contact and we'll set you up a regimen.
Yes, I want to know how to do all of this.
How to do the do.
How to do it.
All right. Do you have any other questions?
No, I don't. Thank you so much, Wes. This was awesome.
Yep. Just let us know and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye, guys.
Okay. Bye.